I'm Mike Fletcher. I'm the chair of the Environmental Action Working Group here at FirstU. Today's Earth Speaks is a little different. Normally, it's kind of a discussion where we invite some people from outside to discuss a big issue. Today, it's a little bit of an internal discussion. We've been talking about green sanctuary since last spring, and it's an initiative, as we know, that involves the whole congregation. So it's an appropriate time for us to have a talk where we talk a lot about what this is going to mean for FirstU. We have quite a long and extensive program for that this morning. We'll be joined by cohort members from the US since we've been working on green sanctuary. We've been involved with cohorts also looking at the Green Sanctuary program at other congregations. And we'll be joined by Reverend Karen Brammer from the UUA. I'll be introducing her a little bit later as she makes a presentation for us about Green Sanctuary. Before we begin, let's gratefully acknowledge that we rest on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. Reconciliation is the work of this congregation and of all Canadians. With that, I'll start our program. Thank you.
We are a flexible and innovative species, and we have the capacity to adapt and modify our behavior. Now, we most certainly have to do so if we're to deal with climate change. It's the biggest challenge we have yet faced.
The same thing that keeps the earth warm, CO2 may make the earth too warm. It holds in heat. Methane, chlorofluorocarbons, water vapor, and carbon dioxide. They all trap heat. Methane, chlorofluorocarbons, water vapor, and carbon dioxide. They all trap heat.
It is important that the world get together to face the problems which attack us as a unit.
The evidence is clear.
The globe is getting too warm.
We can avoid climate catastrophes. We can do this. We can change the world. Science offers us answers to these huge challenges.
It's one global ecosystem.
We can do this. We can
change the world. Every single thing every one of us does affects everybody all over the world. It's one global ecosystem. Warm, wet, cold or dry, climates all start in the sky. Warm, wet, cold or dry, climates all start in the sky.
When the CO2 is high, the temperature is high, moving together in lockstep. When the CO2 is low, the temperature is low, moving together.
It is important that the world get together to face the problems which attack us as a unit.
The evidence is clear.
The globe is getting too warm.
We can avoid climate catastrophes. We can do this.
We can change the world.
Science offers us answers to these huge challenges.
It's one global ecosystem.
We can do this.
We can change the world.
Our use of fossil fuels for energy is pushing us towards a climate unlike any seen in the history of civilization.
Adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere warms things up.
The rise in CO2 comes from burning fossil fuels.
When you burn them, add oxygen and the CO2 that goes in the air.
We're reversing the process by which they form.
We're talking about something that affects the entire earth. Problems that transcend nations. It is important that the world get together to face the problems which attack us as a unit.
The evidence is clear.
The globe is getting too warm.
We can avoid climate catastrophes. We can do this. We can change the world. Science offers us answers to these huge challenges.
It's one global ecosystem.
We can do this. We can change the world.
You can now buy your lottery tickets.
When I focused my intention on how I was going to get involved with the problem of climate change, I joined the Environmental Action Working Group at the church. As you know, we're leading the focus for the next little while on climate change, climate emergency. The Green Sanctuary 2020 program is a compelling guiding framework that's working with us and other UU congregations. We're reaching into that interdependent web that guides and sustains us all our kin. So consider coming to one of our workshops or one of our meetings and getting involved yourself. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Irvin Waller. I support the Green Sanctuary action of FirstU, as it will advance local and international efforts to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We cannot succeed on the decade of action for our planet on poverty, inequality, peace, and justice without succeeding on reversing climate change and environmental degradation.
Hi, I'm Sherry. Climate change. It affects everything and everybody. Natural ecosystems, food security, the economy, health risks such as pandemics, and especially the marginalized. So if we're to protect ourselves and our planet, we all have to put the climate lens on all of our activities. But where do we start? I think Green Sanctuary gives us an answer, helping us identify what we can do in our own lives, in the church, and working with others in the community, helping them to help themselves.
Hi, I'm Susan Tanner, a lawyer with 2 master's degrees in environment and human rights, and 50 years of advocacy experience in senior roles in both government and civil society. And I think Green Sanctuary has got it right to heal our broken relationship with Mother Nature and create a green and just society for our children and grandchildren.
I'm Mike Fletcher from the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. Many moons ago, I realized I was living in an age that would decide whether humanity survives or faces extinction. I started doing things individually. We have a house that's heated with a ground source heat pump. We have solar panels. We grow a lot of our own food. We have a car that plugs in. But along the way, somebody pointed out to me that if we want to go far, we have to go with others. So when I heard about the Green Sanctuary program, how it involves the entire congregation, other Unitarian congregations, and the community at large, I was all in. Today, right now, it's dawn of the first day of our last chance to deal with this problem. Let's get on with it.
Mike, you need to unmute.
Great, thank you. Thanks for everyone who made testimonials and people who are working today to bring everything together, Maury and Guy. I'd like to get on now to introducing our guest speaker. Reverend Karen Brammer has been a UU minister since 1998. She has also served as manager of the UU Council of the International Initiative for Transnational Collaboration. She's collaborating transnationally today. It's an organization that's Indigenous-led process for people of diverse experiences and experiences to and traditions to come together to learn more about what it means for our human relationship together and a relationship to the earth. Reverend Karen will speak about the Green Sanctuary program this morning. We're very lucky to have her taking time early on a Sunday to join us, and look very much forward to what she has to say. Take it away, Karen. Thank you.
You know, I am so honored to be here, and honestly, you all do not need me to inspire. You have certainly inspired me this morning with your words. So beautifully done. I want to make sure I'm working technologically well. Anybody want to direct me differently, please do. What I'm going to do also is to say to you that the INITC, that long name that Mike referred to, I have been a member of. It's a council formed process, an Indigenous Lakota process. And there's no president actually, except for legal requirements for, you know, the nonprofit status. So I do not serve as the president, but I have been participating in that since the Standing Rock uprising a few years ago. And what I want to say to you is there are just so many things I want to say, to share, because this fills my heart so much. One is that I don't know that I've ever wanted to dance to a climate disaster presentation. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for that movie. I just loved how it was presented. And I know for myself personally, and also for the many congregations that I've worked with around the continent, that working on climate, it scientifically, in fact, it has been shown that the more information we provide a person, the more informed they are, but they are not necessarily inspired. They're not necessarily moved beyond a sense of overwhelm. They're not necessarily moved beyond a sense of despair or rage. And so to help us, you know, as much as we all know about climate, what I'm finding among Unitarian Universalist congregations is that we have an essential role to play in grounding our movement for climate change in a positive way, to ground it in our faith and in our community and in our principles, provides a way for human beings to say yes to something that we would rather just not see, or just allow the government to deal with it, or governments to deal with it. So I really want to say also that I mentioned Standing Rock, and there are many things in the world that I have participated in that have shown me that we're doing this work out of a sense of beauty and love of the planet and of all the beings upon the planet, including each other. And that when we are mired in a sense of grief, which happens to me regularly, when we are overwhelmed, which happens to me regularly, that what saves us is a sense of connection to one another, you know, that interdependent web as well, community, our principles of justice and values. When I went to Standing Rock, I was there for 2 weeks in a supporting role. I had opportunities in the past to be a guest inside of a different culture that was, and the event that was controlled completely by the people of that culture. I've never participated in an event like Standing Rock that was directly focused on stopping the fossil fuel industry from destroying land, water, and people. And it was designed as a community of well-being. I had never been in a place where if you were hungry, you got fed. If you needed clothes, you got them. It was given to you. Everything you needed was provided, and it was assumed that you would give everything you could to the well-being of all. And being in that context affirmed what I have known for a long time, which is that when we work in our cultural bubbles that are too well segregated in the United States for sure, but in my cultural bubble of white middle class, we've had to make an effort to get beyond that and to participate and seek an invitation and be received in communities of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and they're learning a new sense of love, a new sense of inspiration, a new sense of groundedness in culture, that without that connection across cultures, I have much less inspiration, many fewer tools, much less to feel inspired by and to feel like I can be part of. And I will also say that here in the United States, being so acutely aware of divide across culture, across political spectrum, across political, I don't mean political, I mean economic divide and race. I am so aware that had we focused on mutuality in our communities, had we focused on learning about one another and listening to one another, and then making common cause where it makes sense to make common cause, we wouldn't be in this situation. And that is true also of climate. That if we make common cause with people who are on socially constructed, divided places, that we learn tremendous amounts, and we find ways to address climate disaster, climate change in a way that will help mitigate climate destruction, that will help to adapt and become resilient as climate change happens, and will also help change the face of injustice. And so inspired by the many Black, Indigenous, and people of color who I've had the honor of working with and learning under, I would like to show you the results of our newest iteration of Green Sanctuary, which is highly inspired by people of color around the world. And so I am going to share my screen with you. And this is going to be a brief presentation because I think talking with one another is so important. And I would love to hear more from each of you. So this is the 7th iteration of Green Sanctuary as a Unitarian Universalist Association program. And it has kept evolving based on what the current reality is and our learning process. The current iteration of the Green Sanctuary program is designed to focus on climate. In the past, it has had multiple approaches to environmental issues and environmental injustice. So right now we're focused on climate, including the mitigation, the adaptation and resilience, and to justice. And those 3 pieces of climate response are actually the 3 campaigns that each congregation will design. The other focus is that it's got to be intersectional. I'll talk more about that. Intersectional meaning involving an understanding and analysis, and also efforts to be in collaboration with people who are in socially isolated and we are artificially separated from, and where others are systemically oppressed. We need to be learning from and with and working with, and movement building across faiths and across all kinds of civic organizations, et cetera. And that's on a local, regional, national, and international basis. So I'll talk about each of those areas briefly, starting with congregational transformation. Many, many congregations around the continent and the world, in fact, are designed to have an environmental group, your racial group, your economic group, your food security group, et cetera. And what we are asking, and also worship, education, and buildings and grounds, et cetera. Congregational transformation asks of congregations to invite each subgroup in the congregation to look at the work, to their calling, to their passions, to what their work is in the congregation and what their love is in the congregation, and see it through the lens of climate. And it doesn't mean completely changing their focus. It means adding an understanding of the impacts of climate that are present and are coming, and the understanding that it will impact others differently from ourselves, and that we need to be thinking at every level in our congregational life, what it's going to look like for us to live responsibly and in relationship in a climate changing world. And then I'm going to stop talking and actually show you a little bit here. So we're looking in terms of long haul, and some of what I said before about being motivated by love of planet, love of the creatures, the beings, and the other people of this planet is the way to move through overwhelm, despair, and numbness. And that requires emotional and spiritual depth, which Unitarian and Unitarian Universalist congregations are well prepared to do if we are really working the program around living our covenants, because we're different from one another and we really need to figure out how to be together in covenantal relationship. And that allows us to work more deeply in our understanding and the way we hold our climate anger, our climate despair, our climate overwhelm, and our rational and emotional lives needing to come together. It will also in congregational life, and to help with transformation of our congregations, we need to learn what it means to live in a climate responsible world where we're not relying on fossil fuels. We have to figure that out as an entire community. And the community also includes the neighborhoods that we live in, and the cities that we're connected to, and the regions that we're part of. What is it going to look like to end fossil dependency? And we need to be doing that now. And again, it is beyond one core group, and it begins to involve, in some way, each part of a congregation figuring out something about what their gift is to live in a climate conscious world, and in a way that's responsive to the values we hold dear and say we care so much about. Anti-oppressive climate work is critical. I know in the United States, for sure, I know a lot more about the United States environmental movements that have that shifted from essentially an environmental justice awareness among people of color first in the 1800s, that shifted in the 1900s to white leadership preserving the land for white use. And it sounds crass because it is crass. I mean, it is the way things evolved in the United States. But we have Martin Luther King as an example, and whom we honor very soon, I think tomorrow, that there are movements among people of color, Indigenous people, and Black people. They have been doing this work for decades, and we've got to figure out ways to get out of what has been, in my experience, a white environmentalist movement to an intersectional movement where we are really working to not intensify racism, classism, colonization, etc., through our work. And I can only do that in relationship, because I was raised as a white person. I don't necessarily know when I am making mistakes, when I am motivated and driven by my well-intentioned but colonial-based training, that I need to be in relationship across those divides to help myself transform and to help our congregations transform. And by the way, the INITC is one of those places in a Lakota context where I've really been humbled to keep learning my training and how deep my training goes as a colonial settler, or descendant of a settler community. So I talked a bit about how inspired I have been in being exposed to and following leadership from communities that are not mine, quote unquote. They're not white, they're not middle class. And that mutuality is critical. We're learning here in the United States, and I guess around the world, I hope, that mutuality, mutual care in communities is critical in addressing and reconstructing our lives in a new way post-COVID, and to prevent and care for ourselves through the next pandemic, that we've got to figure out how to be in mutual relationship. And so that is one of the great learnings when you do anti-oppressive climate work. And we have had, as I said, a long history here in the United States of charity-based work that really leans towards paternalism and exploitation, and that can be totally turned on its head into collaboration when you do climate work in partnership with leadership from frontline communities. Here's one of the other places where I've learned so much, and you can find it online. I just wanted to address the fact that so much of what I learn is not mine. I'm not brilliant. I have learned this from teachers in other communities. And so the Climate Justice Alliance is United States based. I can't imagine that there's not something that's a Canadian equivalent, where frontline communities are working across the east to west and north to south to learn together and to build alternatives. They're trying to shift what is an unjust fossil fuel-based extractive economy into a just transition where what we provide ourselves and each other is based on equity and based on beauty. And then one of the actual practical things that this community has done, I'm aware of the one most in Boston, where anybody who has resources that are now invested in any kind of market can withdraw the money from that market and invest it in a community of color, an indigenous community, who are recreating, are doing something very different to transition away from a a fossil fuel dependent economy. Here are just two examples. I need to create a PowerPoint that has more than 15 examples of congregations that are figuring out how to cross that cultural boundary and work not in leading, but in partnership. So this is the Indianapolis All Souls congregation. Essentially, they found out from the communities of color in their area, it's an urban area, that the priority is transportation, or one of the great priorities was transportation, which meant access to all kinds of necessary resources. It meant access to work. And it was not available to lower income peoples. And so based on the priorities of the communities who are lower income, this congregation became part of the leadership team that actually succeeded in creating an alternative series of routes for communities that were not served in the past. There's another one, Bridgehampton, New York has 45 members, much different situation. They're on the coast. They partnered because of Green Sanctuary. They did not have this partnership beforehand. The Shinnecock community has been controlling its water quality with a lot of different strategies, but they keep getting impacted by communities outside their reservation who are polluting their resources, runoff, cesspools, et cetera. And they will be deeply impacted by the rising oceans. So the Bridgehampton community, part of their work was simply building relationship across really deeply and honestly earned distrust. The Shinnecock had no reason to trust that this community of well-wishing white people would come in, take over, leave, and not have to live with what's happening on a long-term basis in the Shinnecock Nation. And so they're working on building relationship, and to do so, they've gone to meetings, they've gone to powwows, they've gone to a museum set up by the Shinnecock. Now they're supporting, as their climate work, the Shinnecock Eco Tour, which is environmental educational, and it's also an economy. It drives the economy, or helps contribute to the economy of the Shinnecock. And that has been, there are models like that all over the United States. So the piece about mobilization, that third, another aspect of this work is that, yes, we're going to make partners, but we are also going to engage ourselves way beyond the congregation and get involved with mobilization at a higher level. And what I'm going to show you now, because I'm so aware of how much I've been talking, is to get off of, I'm going to stop sharing this, if I can find it. There it is. And then I want to show you very briefly another piece that I won't stay on long, but I want you to see, is a tool for all the congregations and community programs, including water protectors, Indigenous support. There's over, let's see, there are hundreds. I've lost track of how many, hundreds of groups, and more than 1,500 Unitarian Universalists who are participating in this. And it is designed in order to share information and also to communicate with one another in groups, and to store reports and to share things that have gone well with one another, so we can mobilize, we can help one another over time, because this is a long process. So I think I am, excuse me, I think I'm going to stop talking now. I apologize if I've gone over my time, and I thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Karen. Every time I listen to you, it just brings up so many thoughts, and I just get more enthused about
yay,
the potential for green sanctuary. So thank you so much for that. So Mike, are you going to pull up the slide presentation? There we go. Okay. So now let's talk about what green sanctuary means for us as a congregation. And Karen and even our testimonials at the beginning from members of the Environmental Action Group touched on this, but I just want to touch briefly again on kind of what it means for us. And as Karen talked, one of the things that's really wonderful about this is because it is a UU program, it really is based on our principles and our values, and there is that sense of interconnectedness with the web of life, and as important, well, equally with each other and with the expanded community, whether it's UU congregations or our local community. And it is, I think, going to require us to look at doing things differently. So there has been mention of it being a congregation-wide approach, and we've already started some discussions with different working groups, but we will be looking forward to conversations with all of you about how we can make that happen and how we can integrate climate action across everything we're doing. And as Karen also talked really wonderfully about, the other thing that I think will really have us looking at how we do things is this partnering with marginalized groups, and to move away from kind of the charity model, the giving of money, to really look at how we can be in relationship with the group. And of course, as you've seen already, one of the benefits is this networking. And we are so thankful that Green Sanctuary is putting us in contact with other congregations who are following the 2020 program. We're already learning a lot. The video that we saw at the beginning was we learned about it from a presentation that another congregation had done. Next slide, Mike. So just to talk briefly about the process for Green Sanctuary, there are 5 steps. The first is really the education phase, and we certainly have spent some time educating ourselves on the Green Sanctuary program and whether it would be a good fit for us. And of course, with our congregational focus on climate change, it turned out that the new Green Sanctuary program is just a perfect fit for us. And we did in October go to the board and get their support for pursuing Green Sanctuary accreditation. And we completed another major milestone of the first step, and that was to submit a congregational profile to the Green Sanctuary team, the UUA Green Sanctuary team, and that's helped them kind of look at where we're at and help us put us into a cohort with other UU congregations. So the next step is the opportunity assessment. And this is actually, I think, one of the most exciting things that Green Sanctuary is going to have us do. And it's really looking at where are we now? What are we doing? Who are our current partners? What's our current carbon footprint for the congregation? And then looking at the next step so looking at that, what are our opportunities? What else can we be doing? What other community partners could we be reaching out to? So basically, yeah, I mean, this is going to take a while, but I think it will have us think much more deeply about what can we be doing that will really have impact. So the step after that, and it should come fairly easily once we've done the opportunity assessment, is to do the action plan. And then after that, and that will really be looking, as Karen mentioned, at comprehensive campaigns under each of the 3 Green Sanctuary goal areas. So the mitigation, adaptation, and climate justice. Once we have, and at each of these stages, so with the opportunity session and action plan, we will be submitting them to the UUA Green Sanctuary team, and we'll benefit from their feedback and looking at how we can strengthen them. And then once after that, we go ahead and implement our actions. And we certainly have a lot underway that will be built into that action plan, and we'll be doing a final report, which we'll be submitting. And then hopefully that will be our accreditation. And accreditation as a Green Sanctuary, I think, will be a major outcome of our 4-year focus, and might take us a bit longer on climate action. But it will be a major accomplishment, and I think we'll set the stage for really continued and impactful action on climate change. Over to you, Sherry.
Thank you. Well, you've met a great number of the Environmental Action Group who are working on Green Sanctuary team. And as Eva just said, we have completed the congregational profile and submitted that to the UUA. As she also mentioned, we have the opportunity assessment underway, and it's based what we've learned from the profile, but we're also, again, looking for input across the congregation as to how we can be most effective. We've already got a number of things underway. There's the carbon footprint for the church, and some of that's already been done, but Mike will be doing thermal imaging of the church this winter to see how we can improve retrofitting. And of course, we had the carbon footprint Earth Speaks session a couple of weeks ago, so you can measure your own footprint. And that is on YouTube, on the church website, if you want to check up on that, and please do. Obviously, we have Earth Speaks monthly, and on our website, there's Enviro Action, Enviro Bits, and Enviro Advocacy. Donna Bowen-Willer works hard to keep that up to date. So don't think just because you've looked at it once, that's enough. There's always new stuff to do and learn about. The other thing we have going is Hope to Action Photo Voice Project. This is in collaboration between environment and mental health working groups. And again, it's on Facebook, Climb Action. It's a great way to help overcome the fear and frustration and recognize where you're at in the process yourself. But there's also a sense of how to move forward. And of course, the carbon footprint measurement is just one of those actions that you can link with Hope to Action. We also, thanks to Sharon particularly and Anita, have discussions underway with local Indigenous people on a food security project, which will be led by them. It's at its initial stages, but I have to say it's moving quite quickly, all things considered. Now, we did, as some of you will remember, have a survey about 1.5 years ago, and a lot of the actions that we're doing are based on the results from that. Now, is Suzanne with us? Yes, hello, Suzanne.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So yes, we just wanted to loop back and talk a bit about the congregational survey that we did. It was almost exactly 1 year ago, pre-COVID. We wanted to get a baseline on how aware the congregation was at the beginning of climate change, the issues, the impact. We were not surprised to find that we have a congregation that is already well aware, but what we heard is that people generally feel that there was a lot of more that could be done. So people were already taking steps to mitigate the impact, but they wanted to know what else can we do. So some of the ideas that we heard, Mike has several bullets on the slide. Mike, you could just bring up all of the bullets. We heard, for example, people wanted, oh, too far. Yes. So we heard, for example, that people want to be more involved with our local community, our campus partners. Some of these ideas that you see on this slide, we've already used, as was mentioned, for Earth Speaks forums and or other activities. I think in the context of this presentation, it's the last two bullets there that we would really emphasize. Rethinking how we live. What we heard from the congregation last year is that people recognize that the way of life that is people generally live is not sustainable. So people are looking for options for simple living, less consumerism. And then another thing that we heard, which came up big, was, as has already been mentioned, mental anxiety and fear and even grief, that the world needs to change and that this is bigger than ourselves. And people are dealing with anxiety about what happens if things do not change, and how, not just how do I help move it forward, but there's this grief that things are changing. So how do we deal with that? So yeah, that's what we heard, and I'll pass things over to Mike for the next slide.
Mike, you're on mute.
Great. Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody. Yeah, as Suzanne's saying, what can we do now? What do we need from you? So we mentioned how Green Sanctuary is an initiative across the congregation, and here's some things we're thinking of. And many of us are on this already. We've had lots of ideas and passion, so that one's coming in. So I think the message is just keep it coming. And what do you not want to lose? That's the thing that I often think about, and I think we can all identify with that. What climate actions are most important to you? So quite a few of us now have already done our carbon footprint, and we can start thinking about what we could do. So one step at a time, how do How do we all take actions to make things better? And so, again, measure our carbon footprint. It can be involved with action and photo voice, which is a great project. It can relate something that's kind of, analytical, crunch some numbers, and this is what my carbon footprint looks like, to something that's a little bit more spiritual and can maybe speak to us a little more. A lot of the posts have done that, contrasting, pictures of where we are and what's not so good and where we need to be. Often, I think, adds a dimension of understanding what we need to do and visualizing where we need to go. So I think it's a great link between the two. And volunteer. So I think it's fair to say the more people we have helping and working on everything we want to do with Green Sanctuary, the further we're going to get. So those are the big picture things in Green Sanctuary, what you can do. And I look forward to continuing to make progress as we develop our program. I'm not sure, am I screen sharing still? I'm having trouble managing this. No, I'm not. That's great. Wow. Okay. So I'd like now to give a warm welcome to members of our cohort in Green Sanctuary. So the way Green Sanctuary is set up is if we're an applicant to become a Green Sanctuary certified congregation. And we're in a group with other congregations that are in the same place. And we meet periodically and have a chat with each other on how we're making out. And that's a great process. It's led by Karen Brammer, and it really helps us. So I'd like to invite Larry Underwood. He's from Manassas, Virginia, to just make some brief comments, and invite our other colleagues from congregations in the U.S. also to make some comments to us for a few minutes. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be on with you today. Yeah, we got our initial Green Sanctuary status in 2004, and it took us about 18 months to work on that. And we were very proud of ourselves when we achieved that status, and very pleased with ourselves. But we also saw that simply as the first step in our involvement with the climate. And we've managed since then to keep the climate change as a major theme for our congregation. We decided early on that we couldn't tell other people what to do without looking at our own house and cleaning that up. So we conducted an energy audit, came up with a set of projects that we could do to lower our carbon footprint. And we've implemented almost all of those, except the ones that represent a major expenditure. But we have a 5-year plan to solarize our facility. That will require a major financial commitment. In the meantime, we still have a residual carbon footprint. So we have neutralized that by the purchase of carbon offsets. So we consider ourselves carbon neutral through the purchase of those offsets. Our other major emphasis, we're very close to Washington, D.C. and not too far from our state capital. So we're deeply involved in lobbying. We participate with the UUs for Social Justice Advocacy Corps, and up until the COVID hit, we were going down on the Hill and lobbying our congressman every month on not just climate change, but also all the other issues that UUs find important. And we will continue to do that. And our third major project now is working with Karen Brammer and the cohort to recertify ourselves as a Green Sanctuary congregation. And we'll continue to work on that along with the other members of the cohort. So again, thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to hear what other congregations are doing, and I wish you all the luck in the world.
Great. Thanks a lot, Larry. It's great to hear everything you've been able to get done and everything you have planned to continue to work on. It's an inspiration for us. We are running a little bit behind schedule, not that being a timekeeper is a lot of fun, but maybe if there's just one other comment from the cohort. I don't know if, I know Minnesota was protesting line 3 this week. Is there anybody perhaps from the Minnesota congregation with us? I haven't had a chance to look at all the participants. If not, just raise your hand and the host will unmute the first hand they see from one of our cohort. Great. Okay. All right. If there's no other comments, then I'll keep rolling on because again we're a little tight for time. I'd like to ask Lisa from the board to make a few comments. Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. The FirstU board strongly supports the Green Sanctuary project. We know it won't be easy. As a board, we have to consider different priorities. I was happy to hear this morning in the presentation by Reverend Karen that the Green Sanctuary program has an intersectional approach. We believe that both climate justice and social justice are critical issues that we have to address as we look towards the future development of our campus. In my view, you can't look at climate justice without considering poverty and how the climate emergency will affect those affected by poverty. But we believe that we can take action on both of these issues. As well, we are aware that we have made some historical errors as individuals and as a congregation that have hurt our planet and even our land here. But there are actions we can take to mitigate these past errors. For example, we recently have had an ecological survey project done, which will help us to become aware of some of the errors we have made with our land in the past 50 years, and hopefully work towards correcting these errors. Reverend Karen mentioned mobilization. As you may have heard, 2 board members, Irvin Waller and myself, are leading a delegation to this year's UNO Spring Seminar being held in April, which is focused on climate justice, specifically the issue of food security. We know that climate justice matters to young adults and youth in our community. We hope that we will be able to gather a large number of persons of all ages, youth, young adults, and older adults, to participate in this opportunity to work together on a joint project. And we hope that this delegation will return to us with a proposal for climate justice project for our congregation to consider. As John Lennon said, we hope you'll join us on Zoom at the spring seminar this year. Thanks.
Great, thanks, thanks, Lisa. So I'll open things up to answer questions we've received in chat, and we'll do that for about the next 6 minutes or so, and then just open things up generally with the mics unmuted for a bit of discussion. Yeah, just please go ahead. And I think a first question would be, what are next opportunities for action? And I think, you know, our opportunity assessment is going to do a lot to help us with that. You know, what Karen has been saying and other members of the cohort have been saying is that the opportunity assessment will help us identify our strengths and look at where we can get doing some work. And I think the other thing to note is just all the work we're already doing, both in the AWG and in other groups.
And Mike,
maybe, yeah.
Just to add, we are planning a session on the morning of February 13th. It's a Saturday, and it will be a brainstorming session. So we really are serious about getting input in terms of how we can make this a congregation-wide and an impactful action plan. And our next leadership council meeting will also be asking our leaders to look at kind of those questions in a bit different way, I think, than we will on February 13th. So certainly encourage you to come on February 13th and really in advance, if you can give some thought to what are the actions that you think would be most significant for us to be taking.
Great. I'll mention one thing. I was just reminded in the chat that Nancy Smith from the cohort had her hand up, and we missed that right at the time. So Nancy, if you want to go ahead with a few comments.
Nancy is on mute and her camera's off.
Hey, Nancy.
All right. I'm sorry. I had moved into another room. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm chair of the Green Sanctuary Advisory Board, working closely with Karen and on developing this new climate urgency edition of Green Sanctuary. And I just wanted to say how refreshing and inspiring it is to hear the work you're doing, how well presented it is, and just thank you and wish you well.
Thanks a lot.
If I can take half a minute, I want to just
Absolutely.
say that the board, the advisory board of Green Sanctuary, is the owner of what has evolved in this new iteration of Green Sanctuary. It is not staff driven. It is my staff position plus this volunteer team of UU experts. And I'm just so indebted and inspired by them all. And we're looking for new board members if anybody's interested. Lastly, to say that I really want to emphasize that a world in which we are to move more wisely and as whole human beings on this earth will require music, art. It'll require new ways of worshiping. It'll require all the passions that people have. There are too many people who think, you know, I can't do the numbers involved in figuring out my footprint, but I can create a beautiful quilt that will help inspire. And I can talk to the kids and I can lead the kids and we can do videos. You know, everybody's gifts will make a difference. And so I just want to leave you with that and say thank you so much for who you are and how you come into this work.
Well, thank you, Karen. That's you've been very inspiring this morning, and inspiration is, like you say, it's a lot of what we need in this. You know, what you've said, that that people can often be mired in grief or anguish about what's going on and kind of paralyzed. I think that rings very, very true, and the way you strongly identify it. So thanks for your contribution this morning. It was great. And you said we can't do this without art. So that's a segue. We didn't plant this, folks, to a little bit of closing music. And afterwards, if you want to stay on for just open chat, have the microphones open and we can have some banter for about 20 minutes thereafter. All right, that was great. Thanks a lot.
And we need to start right now.
Congratulations, Keith.